How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. We are back with you this week, and with me, as always, is Leonard. And returning once again is our friend Dan. He is going to be joining us again this week, and we are going to be talking about the Royal Rumble. And obviously, the Royal Rumble is coming up here soon at the end of January, and it's always, I just have to say, it's always one of my favorite pay-per-views, and it will be extremely strange without a crowd because we know now that how much the crowd adds to wrestling in general, but I would say the crowd is extra important for the Royal Rumble, and it'll be super strange to see that event without a crowd. And one wonders if they're going to do any surprise entrance of any sort, but we will see. But Leonard and I were debating on what we were going to make our topic this week in connection with the Royal Rumble, and we settled on just kind of talking about our favorite Royal Rumble matches of all time, not necessarily the pay-per-view, but the Royal Rumble match itself. So that's what we're going to do, and I will get started here. And my favorite is the 1990 Royal Rumble, and obviously I probably watched being born before that. I watched wrestling before that, but the 1990 Royal Rumble was one of my first most vivid memories of watching a pay-per-view. And back then I had to rely on, a gentleman in the neighborhood who had a black box who would record it and put it on VHS. And once it made the rounds of everybody who wanted to watch it, then finally it made its way to me. But this is one of my favorites for many reasons. I just think that this is one of the best overall versions of what a Royal Rumble can be. Now, obviously, as it went on, it would become more like, who the surprise entrants are going to be and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of classic wrestling, I really love the way this one is laid out. It should be noted that this is one of the rare events that Tony Schiavone was doing the play-by-play for with Jesse Ventura. I think that they were an underrated team, and I thought that Tony Schiavone did really well here. But Hulk Hogan obviously won this, and the classic moment in this match is his showdown with the Ultimate Warrior, where they meet in the ring for the first time, and they're teasing what is to come at WrestleMania 6, which, what a fitting poster Leonard has there behind him.
Oh, I knew when I put that up.
Absolutely. And, some other notable highlights of this one is Ted DiBiase, who went almost 45 minutes in this one. Obviously, people would eclipse the longevity time as the years went along, but he really put on a good performance in this. And there is just a lot of classic guys in this. I was looking at it and I didn't realize that the Earthquake is in it. He went by the Canadian Earthquake at this time. And it took a bunch of guys to get him out. I remember that. And you also have some randos like the Red Rooster, and you have Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage and Jake Roberts, and you name it. All the classic 80s guys that we grew up with are pretty much in this. Rick Rude, and most notably, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on the air, is Andre the Giant. And going off what Dan was saying, this was his last Royal Rumble. And I looked up a little bit of information, and apparently he was scheduled to be in the 1991 Royal Rumble, but his health was so bad, according to Bruce Pritchard, even if they had put him in at number 30 for the 91 Rumble, it wouldn't have looked very good. So Andre was in this one, though. And that's a highlight. I thought it was great that the match came down to Mr. Perfect and Hogan, who had a little bit of a feud going at this time. Mr. Perfect was great. I mean, this was peak Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, I think at this time. So yeah, this is just, it wasn't a super long Rumble. It was just classic wrestling. The crowd was really hot for Hogan, and a lot of faces that I miss, an era that I miss of wrestling. So, what do you think, Leonard, about the 1990 Rumble?
Recently I watched the 88 and 89 Rumbles just because. And then I watched this one because we were going to be talking about it. And I think the big difference between the first two and this one is the feel. I think this is the first time where the Rumble goes from being an experiment that we're trying to this is going to be a staple of our schedule.
Right.
The crowd, as you mentioned, is super hot throughout. I think all the wrestlers are really hot. They seem really energized when they come out. I think they got smoother with the idea of the entrances and the exits and all that. Yeah, Jesse Ventura and Tony Schiavone are your team, which is very unique, but I think they're jazzed for it. They helped to really push it. And, I think that makes this, at least for me, the first like true Rumble, even though you had two before this that, were Rumbles technically, but just the feel of it. This is always one of, as you said, it's one of your favorite shows you look for every year. And even though I haven't been watching the product regularly, like we've talked about, I am looking to watch the Rumble this year. And I'm actually in a Rumble pool. So that makes it a little funner because you've got, stakes in the game. Just to mention before I go on here, I've got 7 and 10 in the women's Rumble. But in the men's Rumble, I have 11, 25, and 27. So I got 3 numbers for that one. Yeah, you mentioned Ted DiBiase. He's really the superstar here throughout the match. I mean, he goes about 45 minutes. And the thing was, this is continuity from 89, because in 89, it was teased that he had paid off Slick to get the number 30 spot. So this year he comes back and he's number 1, going, well, I didn't pay him off because I took 1 this year. And he really is given a great showcase here. I think the Rumble is they always let somebody like, okay, you're not going to win, but we're let you be in there for a long time. We're going to let you be in there for 40 minutes or so ever. And then those guys usually, get over from this. And of course, DiBiase isn't going to get over, but still with everything with him, I think it was like, we're going to give you this showcase. And he was able to really do that. As mentioned, there's some big names. I'm surprised with the big names from the beginning because you have DiBiase, Roddy Piper, Jake Roberts, and Randy Savage all in there at the same time very early on in the first half of the match. A great thing about Rumbles is that you see people teaming up or working together that you normally would never see. Like there's a point where Andre the Giant is being double teamed by Axe and Dusty Rhodes. Like that sounds like a fever dream match for us. Those 3 guys going at it. Also, this was one of the rare Rumbles where the managers were allowed at ringside.
True.
That usually they had to walk them down and leave. But here, they're there the whole time. And 2 things with that is, one, anytime DiBiase is near the ropes, Virgil goes over there.
Yeah.
So that's great work by Virgil to I'm just here in case, right? And then you see something else you would never see. Bobby Heenan and Mr. Fuji get into it at one point because 2 of their guys are trying to forget who they are. But like Heenan's like on the ring stairs, like coming at Fuji. I'm like, what? Because I didn't remember that either from having watched it years ago. So that is, and another, you mentioned Earthquake. I think he's not in there very long, but I think he gets to start making performance here too.
Yeah.
He eliminates a few guys. He does the Earthquake stomps. Dino Bravo and Ultimate Warrior get into it later on. They were kind of feuding at the time before that transition to Hogan Warrior. So they're in that. Again, this all feels like it's building up to that stare down between Hogan and Warrior. And then once Warrior gets eliminated, I think the energy goes down a little bit because I think it was a foregone conclusion at that point that Hogan was going to win. Right. I do like that it's Hogan Hennig at the end. I would love to have seen Hennig win. That's more in retrospect, but even at the time, I wasn't necessarily the biggest Hulk Hogan fan. I liked a lot of the other guys better. As I said, this is just if you want to get introduced to the Rumble, like I don't know what the Royal Rumble is, this would be a good one to watch from the early days.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Dan, your thoughts here on the '90 Rumble?
You guys have covered most of it. I probably should have done a little bit of homework before.
Well, that's why we saved you for last, so we could coach you along.
I mean, the things that I remember, just the stars that were on there, Hogan and Warrior, getting in each other's face. That was a great start. I did think it was Andre's because at 91 just didn't seem like it was that great of a Rumble. So I was thinking this was Andre's last. but just the stars back then, man. That for me, that's my professional wrestling heyday, is that late 80s, early 90s, and just the characters. And you said DiBiase for, what was it, 45 minutes? Is that what you said? 50 minutes?
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah.
Coming in number one, I thought that was great, because he was one of those guys that was just, he was always there, man. I didn't like him at the time, but I've got a lot of respect for the man now.
And I think, what was it, the previous year he had bought number 30, didn't he?
Yes, that was the storyline, that he supposedly bought 30 from Slick. But if you go back and look, like, Slick's guys were Akeem and Boss Man, and they both were like in the 20s. So like, it doesn't make sense. Why was DiBiase so upset if the lowest he had was 22 or something?
Right.
So they didn't think that one through. But the idea here was he winds up with number one to say, well, see, I didn't buy 30 last year. I got number one this year.
Right.
And, you know, this is one thing to mention, too, that they did here. And the one I'm going to talk about is they have all these promos before the matches of all the guys talking about what they're going to do. And a lot of them they do the number draws for some of them, and some of them show the numbers and all that. Like Mr. Perfect, that was a storyline with him, that he had the perfect draw. He had the perfect number, that he got number 30. So that was part of the pre-show, or the pre-interview, the pre-promos before the Rumble itself. So that's something that I don't think they do that anymore. Just like all the guys doing 30-second, I'm going to win the Rumble promos.
No, those were classic. Absolutely.
My pick is the 1992 Royal Rumble. So again, old school from both of us. And this is one that a lot of people think is the best Rumble of all time. And a lot of other people, they don't have it at 1, they have it in the top 5. And it's for 3 main reasons. One is the stakes. The WWF World Heavyweight Championship is on the line in this one. 2 is the performance by Ric Flair, and 3 is the performance by the commentary team of Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. You don't really hear a lot of people talk about, oh, that was a great commentary on that match. You know, that was the best commentary on a match. You don't hear that a lot, but you do hear that with the 92 Rumble, that a lot of people do think that is like the commentary really helped to elevate something that was already great to be even more great. And if you think about a Rumble or even any Battle Royal, it's not a lot going on. It's punches and kicks and guys hanging onto the ropes. Right. So the fact that you have Monsoon and Heenan doing like almost a comedy routine on the side here, but still calling the action and being serious about it, I think helps elevate it. Because Heenan was associated with Ric Flair at the time. He wasn't his manager because he wasn't, managing people, but he was like his financial advisor, and Mr. Perfect was the executive assistant or something like that to Ric Flair. So you had Heenan just screaming, "You've got to be fair to Flair," and wigging out throughout the whole thing. Like there's one part where Piper saves Flair, and Bobby Heenan says, "Oh, thank you, Piper. Thank you so much. Like, I'll never call it a skirt again. It's a kilt. It's a kilt." And then right after that, Piper goes after Flair, and Heenan's like, "You skirt wearing no good," and goes off on him. Is great. The Barbarian comes in and goes right after Flair, and Monsoon says something like, "Oh, Barbarian, he doesn't seem to like Ric Flair." And Heenan's like, "I managed the Barbarian. He didn't like me." And just great barbs like that throughout. So that really helps to raise it. Again, Ric Flair's performance. I know that I think it may be Bruce Pritchard had said that the idea was that Flair was going to be number 1 and go the whole way. And then Vince McMahon was like, well, nobody would believe that. So make him 3. No one would believe he could start 1 and go the whole way, even though people have won from the 1 slot since him.
Right.
But, he comes in at 3. And just a dynamic performance throughout. This feels like kind of 2 Rumbles to me. There's the first half up until the Boss Man gets eliminated. And then Flair does a Flair flop. And then Piper comes out, and the look on Flair's face is like, holy shit, I'm screwed now because it's Roddy Piper. Throughout, Flair does great mannerisms and facial expressions and all this. The crowd here builds well. Like we talked in the 91, they were hot throughout, but this is a crowd that I think gets hotter as it goes on, which is a nice build. Davey Boy Smith is a star here in the early going. Him and DiBiase were the first 2 guys in the ring, and DiBiase gets eliminated before Flair comes out, which is kind of, odd considering we just talked about him in the 90 Rumble going 45 minutes. I'm not sure what he did in 91 because I haven't watched the 91 yet. I did 88, 89, 90, and then I jumped ahead to watch this one. And everything with Flair is you get some nice callbacks because he gets to work with Kerry Von Erich and he gets to work with Greg Valentine, who are people he was associated with back in the past. There's a stretch here where we have Piper, Flair, and Jake Roberts all working against each other. And WWF didn't do triple threats back then, but if they did, that would have been a hell of a triple threat because Jake could easily work tweener between a face Piper and a heel Flair, and it would have been a great match, great triple threat if we could have got that. But we got something here. Dan's man, The Undertaker, has such a presence, and there's a great bit where UT is choking Flair and Piper out at the same time while Piper is choking Flair. It's like a three-way choke triangle. It's great. Taker, like I said, yeah, Taker just has such a presence, and this was during a period where he was establishing himself because, of course, the title was up, which I forgot to mention at the start for anyone who might forgot that at Survivor Series, Undertaker beat Hogan, and then there was a bunch of stuff that went down at this Tuesday in Texas, and that's how the title became vacant. So, but of course, the big moment here is at the end with Sid eliminating Hogan and then Hogan being a dick and hanging on to Sid's arm so Flair can flip him out. And, you know, Hulk Hogan, for being a mega babyface in the 80s to the early 90s, did a lot of dickish things.
Oh, he did a lot of heel stuff.
He did a lot of heel stuff,
Absolutely.
not just like eye rakes and back rakes in matches, which he would do all the time. But like, you know, you look at his relationship with Paul Orndorff and Randy Savage, you know, on screen, I mean, behind backstage, it was always Hogan being selfish to the other guys. So he's selfish here. He was eliminated fair and square by Sid, and he didn't want to take it. But then that ultimately winds up with Flair winning. And then, of course, the promo afterwards of Flair winning with a tear in my eye is one of the all-time great Flair promos as well when he talks about winning the title. So, you know, from start to finish, this is just one of the best Rumbles ever because of the story told and everyone who helps to tell the story. And I again, you know, one of the best ever. You could have said, hey, you could have went with something a little more obscure to talk about, but, you know, 92 is one of the best. And I know, Dan, we were talking a little bit before we came on the air, so I know Dan has a lot to say about, or some things to say about 92. So I'll go to you.
Well, you covered a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about your opinion of Hulk Hogan and what he did.
I mean, yeah, I knew about hey, he got tossed out and hold on to Sid. That just, it's like, that was the first time for me that Hulkamania was just like, it's tainted. And I had to question some things in my life. But yeah, that was, even as a kid, I was like, that's not cool. You don't do that, Hogan.
Yeah, but you were more into Sid mania.
I mean, Undertaker's been my guy since I saw him walking out and, you know, with the black and gray. And whoa, but Sid was just, there's a special place in my heart for Sid.
And Sid was a monster at this point. Watching this again, I was surprised at how small Hogan looked next to Sid because Hogan's a huge dude. But next to Sid,
this was probably Sid at his biggest, like, you know, bulk muscular wise,
physical
like,
size.
Yeah, like he was really, really big here. Yeah, absolutely.
It just, again, from, you know, we talked about 90 and 92, the names that are in this, you know, you got your Pipers and Jake Roberts, Bret Hart, DiBiase, Macho Man, all these great guys. It's just, I mean, I can't get bored watching these. I mean, just fast pace of these with all these stars. You know, like I said, I don't really remember a lot of the side matches that were on the card. These Royal Rumbles were just, as a kid, I was always looking forward to Royal Rumble and Survivor Series because I like the old fashioned, we're getting this group together to go against this group. I wish they kind of back a little bit, but you know,
I get that for Survivor Series, I get them not wanting to, it's kind of gets tiresome if it's all the same Survivor Series matches. But I think what you do is you do one and then you have a regular match and you do one and you have a regular match. And
you see, I loved the year that they did the like survivors making a team
Oh yeah, the Ultimate Survivor
at the end. And like Bruce Pritchard has talked about how like apparently like he didn't like that, and like I guess there were other people that didn't like it as well. But I thought that was a really good year for that. I wish that I agree with what you're saying about alternating. I do wish they would do more standard Survivor Series matchups. But I would love it if they brought back that formula again, having the survivors do like an ultimate match at the end. But I doubt that that's ever going to happen. And you know what? With the current roster, I don't even know if I care that much. But anywho, our Survivor Series sidebar there. Yeah, I mean, this Rumble is probably the best top to bottom, simply because, and Dan talked about it, and so did you, Leonard. Like, if you were to look at looking at the names on this one from start to finish, like it's every icon of wrestling, and it is just like great, just because there's everybody you can imagine is in it, and that's why I love it. But also, it's because you have Ric Flair being the guide. And I think that's kind of the key. Like you always have a guy doing, a really long performance. But in the case of this one, it's Ric Flair, who's known for going long matches with Ricky Steamboat and whoever else. So he was kind of the perfect guy to be the leader of this match. And the fact that it was for the title was also a very big deal. So yeah, this is one of my favorites, to the point where I'm going to have to go and, watch it again because, it's just that entertaining.
and Flair was in for, I didn't mention his time. He was in for more than an hour, which was the record at the time. And
right.
Of course, that was a thing between Monsoon and Heenan, because Heenan kept asking, how long has he been in there? How long has he been in there? And Monsoon would keep updating him on the time. So they really, this was, I think, one of the first times too, where they were really like pushing the time limit, like how long someone's been in there.
Right. Well, before we wrap up here, I'll just say that if I were to make a list, it would be these two being my top two. But if I were to list a number three, I just want to give another shout out to the 1998 Royal Rumble. The ones that Stone Cold were all good to me, but this one in particular, I'm going to recommend simply because you had every face of Foley in this at one point, and to me he made it so entertaining, and you kind of knew at this point, like, Stone Cold was the guy there, again, like Hogan winning his, like there wasn't really a whole lot of doubt as to who was going to win. But I like the 1998 one a lot, and I like the one that Stone Cold was in where he came back in and eliminated Bret Hart too. But Leonard, are there any off the top of your head that you can think of before we have to wrap up here that you would like to give a shout out to?
And then the only other one I would really mention is the one where Rey Mysterio won from the number one slot as, the super underdog. But yeah, the Mysterio one where he wins from the number one position, I think was a really good Rumble and really well booked, and did a lot to get Rey over that.
Yeah.
I mean, Rey went from being like kind of like right there to being, right here, to going through the roof as a main event, and an all-time legend for them with that. So
absolutely.
So that would be another one off the top of my head I would mention.
Absolutely. Dan, before we sign off, are there any that come to your head, or any moments, Royal Rumble moments, that you want to give a shout out to? We're putting you on the spot, but if you can't think of anything, that's all right.
I can think of Kane throwing a lot of people out. I can't remember which one that was. Was that?
I don't remember. That just came to mind when he said moments.
You know what? I'll put an edit up here that says which one that is. Off the top of my head, I can't think of it.
Kane set the record for throwing out the most people.
Yeah,
that was a good one. Taker never won a Rumble, did he?
07?
Did he win one? Okay.
Isn't that him and Michaels were like 1 and 2, or like the last two in?
Maybe. I'd have to look again. There has been so many Rumbles and so many people that they kind of blur. So without having the list in front of me, it's kind of hard to remember who all won and who was all involved. That would be interesting. Look at guys who were never in a Rumble. I don't know what that list would look like of notable people. Maybe guys who never really worked for WWF, I guess.
Yeah. The Undertaker did win in 2007.
There you go. Good call.
All right.
Do something.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. Well, I believe that's going to wrap us up here. So we thank you for joining us. Dan, we thank you again for joining us. We'll definitely have to have you back on. It was a lot of
Love
fun.
to be
Absolutely. And if you have anybody out there has any favorite Rumbles they want to share, please let us know. I remember the one that John Cena came back in early from his injury was a big moment. That Rumble overall I didn't like, but his comeback was cool.
Yeah, very surprising because
yeah.
everyone was saying, "Oh, he's not going to be back for another year yet or something."
Right. So for Leonard and Dan, my name is Chad. Please make sure to look at my other show, Dailies to Downloads. Comment, let us know what you think, and we will see you next week with probably the York Foundation. Thank you very much.